On the afternoon of November 10th, 1943, at Germany's primary Luftwaffe aircraft testing facility in Rechlin, Chief Test Pilot Hans-Werner Lerche walked across the tarmac toward a captured Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, a machine that to German eyes looked like an affront to engineering elegance. To Luftwaffe pilots, the bulky American fighter was a flying milk bottle, grotesquely fat and inelegant. Lerche had read the intelligence briefings claiming that American aircraft were crude, mass-produced by a nation better at making refrigerators than fighters. The P-47, the reports said, was the perfect example: heavy, unsophisticated, relying on brute force rather than precision. German fighters like the Messerschmitt Bf 109 and Focke-Wulf 190 were refined instruments of engineering. The P-47 was a sledgehammer. Yet, Lerche was about to learn that what the Americans had built wasn't crude. It was something far more dangerous, practical. This was an aircraft designed not for individual aces, but for armies, not for breaking records, but for breaking enemies through sheer numbers and relentless reliability. Within 90 minutes, Lerche would file a report that history would later vindicate. Germany had built fighters for excellence. America had built fighters for industrial war. And in total war, that difference would prove decisive. Hans-Werner Lerche had been flying since childhood. Born in 1916 in Breslau, he began gliding in the early 1930s, rising through determination despite his modest background. When Hitler came to power and Germany began secret rearmament, new opportunities opened. By 1939, Lerche was a test pilot at Rechlin, the Luftwaffe's equivalent of America's Wright Field. Unlike combat pilots who specialized in one or two aircraft types, Lerche flew everything: German prototypes, production models, and captured Allied planes, eventually logging over 120 aircraft types. A trained aeronautical engineer, his reports were known for brutal honesty. If a design was inferior, he said so. If an enemy aircraft was better, he documented it. This candor made him unpopular with Nazi officials, who preferred comforting lies to uncomfortable truths, but his technical authority was unquestioned. If Lerche said an aircraft was good or bad, people listened, even if reluctantly. The P-47 Thunderbolt on Rechlin's airfield had its own story. Its pilot, Lieutenant William Roach of the 358th Fighter Squadron, 355th Fighter Group, became lost in bad weather on November 7, 1943. Running low on fuel, his flight scattered. One crash landed on a beach, another pilot bailed into the North Sea, and only one made it back to England. Roach spotted what he thought was a friendly airfield, landed and taxied in, only to realize too late he was in occupied France, at a Luftwaffe base in Cannes. Captured alive, he became a prisoner of war, and his aircraft Beetle became German property. Quickly flown inland to Rechlin and repainted in Luftwaffe camouflage with the code T9+FK, the mark of the Zircus Rosarius test unit, the American fighter awaited evaluation. German pilots mocked the P-47 as clumsy and oversized, a brute symbol of America's quantity over quality mentality. But Lerche had learned not to judge by appearance. He knew British and American engineers were not fools. If they built a machine this way, there was a reason. Inspecting the aircraft, he immediately noticed the solid, deliberate construction, clean welds, precise panel fits, high-grade materials, hallmarks of advanced mass production, not crude workmanship. German factories, under wartime strain, could no longer match this consistency. Climbing into the cockpit, Lerche was struck by its size. Compared to the cramped Bf 109, it felt cavernous. To a German pilot used to tight confines, it might seem wasteful, but Lerche realized this was deliberate. The spacious cockpit reduced fatigue on long missions and offered exceptional visibility. The seat was padded, the canopy clear, every control within reach. This was not a luxury, it was operational efficiency. Then he saw something remarkable. The instrument panel used color-coded gauges. Green and red markings indicated safe and danger zones, allowing pilots to read the engine's status at a glance without needing to interpret numbers. Lerche understood instantly why. American squadrons included pilots of many nationalities: French, Polish, even those with limited English. The color coding meant anyone could fly it safely. It was simple, universal, and effective. Engineering designed for people, not perfection. Where German manuals assumed mastery, American manuals assumed inexperience, guiding pilots step by step. This wasn't crude, it was inclusive design optimized for war. Lerche continued his inspection. The controls were logical, the throttle and propeller pitch grouped neatly, the fuel controls clearly labeled. German fighters were designed for experts, the P-47 was designed for soldiers. By late 1943, Luftwaffe training was collapsing. Fuel shortages left new pilots barely prepared before combat. Germany still built aircraft for aces, while the US built planes any competent pilot could handle. Starting the P-47's massive Pratt and Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine, Lerche was immediately impressed. It ran with effortless smoothness, something rare in late-war German engines plagued by inconsistent quality and poor parts fit. The American engine idled with confidence, steady and dependable, as if it could run forever. The P-47's engine ran with perfect smoothness. No vibration, no rough spots, no troubling sounds, just steady, powerful operation. This was mass production at a level Germany could no longer match. Building one perfect engine under controlled conditions was one thing. Building thousands of engines that performed flawlessly, time after time, was something else entirely. Lerche received clearance to taxi toward the runway, and another revelation quickly followed. The P-47's wide landing gear and locking tailwheel kept the aircraft straight and stable. Ground handling was easy, visibility good, and the aircraft felt remarkably solid. In contrast, the Bf-109's narrow gear made it notoriously unstable on the ground. Many inexperienced Luftwaffe pilots damaged their aircraft during takeoff or landing, casualties of engineering that favored agility over safety. The P-47, however, had been designed for rough forward airstrips and for pilots of widely varying skill. Its rugged gear absorbed hard landings, and its forgiving nature prevented accidents. Later, Lerche would recall nearly ground looping once, when he forgot to lock the tailwheel, but the aircraft's forgiving design saved him. In a Bf-109, that mistake would have ended differently. Lining up on the runway, Lerche advanced the throttle. The acceleration was powerful and steady. The heavy fighter gathered speed confidently before lifting smoothly into the air. As the landing gear retracted and he began to climb, Lerche immediately noticed the aircraft's stability. The P-47 was not agile in the German sense. It didn't turn sharply or respond with the instantaneous twitch of a Bf-109 or F-190, but it was predictable, steady, and trustworthy. Testing the flaps and controls at altitude, he found everything worked exactly as designed. There were no quirks, no hidden vices, no delicate systems demanding constant management. The pattern was becoming clear. The P-47 wasn't built to dominate dogfights. It was built to function perfectly every time. It was reliable, robust, and tolerant of pilot error. German fighters were racehorses, temperamental and exquisite. The P-47 was a workhorse, and Lerche was beginning to understand that in industrial warfare workhorses won. At higher altitudes, above 15,000 feet, the P-47's turbo supercharger came alive. The Thunderbolt accelerated effortlessly while German fighters would have been gasping for power in the thin air. Its dive performance was exceptional, and its roll rate surprisingly strong for its size. Lerche flew for about 90 minutes, testing every system and maneuver. The Thunderbolt never faltered. The controls remained firm, the engine consistent, the systems entirely reliable. That was when the realization struck him. The P-47 was not designed to be the ultimate fighter. It was designed to be the ultimate operational fighter. German engineers chased perfection. American engineers chased reliability. A perfectly tuned Bf-109 in expert hands might outperform a P-47 in a duel, but how often were German fighters perfect? How often were pilots truly expert? How often did mechanics have the time, fuel, and parts for precision maintenance? The P-47 was built for a harsher truth. It assumed imperfect conditions, inexperienced pilots, and field maintenance under fire. It was designed to keep flying no matter what. Every aspect, from its forgiving controls to its robust structure, served one purpose: sustained operational availability. Returning to Rechlin, Lerche brought the Thunderbolt in for landing. The touchdown was smooth, the heavy gear soaking up the impact with ease. As ground crews surrounded the aircraft, waiting for his verdict, Lerche studied the broad-bodied fighter for a long moment before saying something that stunned them. "It's the best designed operational fighter I've ever flown." The mechanics were baffled. How could something so large and inelegant be well designed? Lerche explained calmly, "It wasn't built for performance, it was built for operations, and there was a difference." That evening he sat at his desk and began his report. Flying the aircraft was one thing, understanding its strategic implications was another. His report detailed performance, handling, systems, and finally strategic assessment. The P-47, he wrote, was fast at high altitude but slower below. Its dive was excellent, turn adequate, and climb solid. Its cockpit was comfortable, its visibility good, its handling forgiving, its systems logical, and its engine exceptionally reliable. But his most important section was the last. The P-47, he wrote, embodied a fundamentally different philosophy. German fighters were built for peak performance, assuming expert pilots and ideal maintenance. The P-47 was built for sustained reliability, assuming average pilots and field conditions. Its ruggedness meant fewer accidents, its durability meant more aircraft returning home, its reliability meant more sorties, and its simplicity meant faster training. The Americans had not built the best fighter, they had built the most operational fighter, one they could produce in numbers. Germany could never match. In his final assessment, Lerche concluded that the P-47 was not crude engineering, it was sophisticated operational engineering. Germany built aircraft for individual brilliance, America built aircraft for industrial war. If the US could field hundreds of such planes, Germany's technical edge would mean nothing against relentless operational strength. His recommendation was clear: future German designs must prioritize reliability as much as performance. Without that shift, Germany could not win an attrition war against a nation that could keep its fighters flying. Lerche's report was read, discussed, and ultimately dismissed as pessimistic. Officials clung to the belief in German superiority, but within months, his warning came true. By early 1944, waves of P-47 Thunderbolts filled the skies over Germany, escorting bombers deep into the Reich. Day after day they returned. German pilots shot some down, but the next day more appeared. The supply seemed endless. Meanwhile, German factories suffered under bombing, shortages, and falling quality. Engines failed, parts mismatched, and the Luftwaffe's once elite edge crumbled. Lerche's prophecy had been realized. America had mastered the engineering of endurance, and in total war, endurance was victory. Systems malfunctioned and the operational availability gap widened. The Luftwaffe might have appeared strong on paper, but fewer aircraft were actually flying each day. American units, by contrast, maintained far higher readiness because their machines were designed for it. Lerche continued his work at Rechlin, flying more captured aircraft and writing more reports. He tested a P-51 Mustang and was impressed by its balance of range and performance. He flew Spitfires, Hurricanes, and Soviet fighters, each flight reinforcing the same conclusion: Allied aircraft prioritized operational reliability above all else. The P-47 Thunderbolt that Lerche had flown was later transferred to Circus Rosarius, a Luftwaffe demonstration unit that toured frontline bases with captured Allied planes, teaching German pilots how to recognize and fight them. Ironically, while German pilots learned about the P-47's strengths, their own aircraft were never redesigned to match its operational advantages. By late 1944, the Luftwaffe was collapsing, not because its pilots lacked courage or skill, but because its industry could no longer sustain the war. Aircraft sat grounded for lack of fuel. New pilots received only a fraction of the training they needed because there wasn't enough fuel for practice flights. Replacement parts were scarce. Everything Lerche had identified as the American advantage, operational sustainability, was absent from the German war effort. Yet Lerche survived the conflict. His discipline and precision as a test pilot meant he never crashed or seriously damaged a plane. even after flying more than 120 different types. Many of them captured Allied aircraft he had to operate without manuals or prior experience. After Germany's surrender, Lerche was interrogated by Allied intelligence officers fascinated by his evaluations of captured aircraft. They had found his reports and asked about his conclusions. "You wrote that American aircraft were superior, not in performance, but in operational design," one officer said. "That's an unusual assessment." Lerche nodded. "It was the most important one. Your pilots weren't necessarily better than ours, and your aircraft weren't faster or more agile, but you could keep more of them flying, train more pilots, and sustain operations that we couldn't." When asked if this was clear from the moment he flew the P-47, he replied simply, "Immediately. Every design choice made sense once I understood the philosophy. You weren't building for dogfighting supremacy, you were building for sustained operations. The comfortable cockpit meant pilots could fly 8-hour missions, the forgiving handling meant fewer accidents, the reliable engine meant less downtime, the rugged structure meant damaged planes came home." Did German leadership understand this? Lerche laughed bitterly. His report had been filed and dismissed. Officials claimed he'd lost objectivity after flying enemy aircraft. German engineering was superior, American engineering was crude, they said, and any evidence to the contrary was ignored. Asked if adopting the American design philosophy earlier could have changed the outcome, Lerche thought carefully. By 1943, probably not. Our industrial base couldn't match American or Soviet production, but if we'd valued operational reliability from the start, our fighters would have been far more effective. We lost too many planes to accidents, breakdowns and maintenance problems that better design could have prevented. Lerche wasn't alone in this realization. Many German engineers recognized the same truth and wrote similar reports, but their findings were suppressed because they contradicted Nazi ideology about German superiority. The final numbers told the story. The US built over 15,600 P-47 Thunderbolts, at peak, one every hour. Germany built about 36,000 single-engine fighters of all types during the entire war, constantly disrupted by bombing. Worse, German readiness rates fell behind. American units with 100 P-47 SIR might have 85 or 90 ready for missions, while German units with 100 aircraft might have only 60 or 70 due to maintenance, part shortages or lack of fuel. The result was devastating. More planes, higher availability, and better sustainability created overwhelming numerical superiority where it mattered most. In later years, Lerche published his memoir Luftwaffe Test Pilot, Flying Captured Allied Aircraft of World War II, recounting flights in everything from B-17 bombers to P-51 Mustangs. His analysis of the P-47 was detailed and technical, including his famous observation about its comfortable cockpit compared to the cramped Bf-109. What made his story remarkable wasn't just that he flew captured planes, many did, but that he understood them. As both engineer and pilot, he could see not just how aircraft performed, but why they were designed that way, and what that revealed about industrial philosophy. The P-47, he tested in November 1943, represented more than a single captured fighter. It embodied a different vision of warfare. Germany still fought as though it were 1916, relying on individual skill and superior craftsmanship. America fought an industrial war, one of endurance, logistics, and scale. German aircraft, like the Bf 109 and Ford U-190, were superb when they worked perfectly, but perfection became rare. As resources dwindled, production quality dropped, and maintenance faltered. The P-47, by contrast, kept flying. It took damage and came home. It operated from rough fields, could be fixed by ordinary mechanics, flown by average pilots, and replaced in endless numbers. Lerche had seen this clearly in 1943. His report predicted the Luftwaffe's downfall with eerie accuracy, but it was ignored because the truth was politically inconvenient. History often punishes those who see clearly before others. Hans-Werner Lerche flew the P-47 and immediately recognized that it represented not superior performance, but superior philosophy. His insight was dismissed, and within a year, his warnings became reality as the Luftwaffe was ground down by an enemy that simply kept its planes flying. The lesson is timeless in sustained conflict: reliability beats brilliance, operational availability beats raw capability. The P-47 Thunderbolt may not have been the fastest or most elegant fighter of the war, but it was the best designed for war itself. And in war, the side that can keep fighting longest is the one that wins. The P-47 Thunderbolt may not have been the fastest or most agile fighter of World War II, but it was the best designed for war itself. It wasn't built for show, but for survival. And in war, the side that can keep fighting the longest is the one that ultimately wins. If you enjoyed this deep dive into forgotten wartime engineering and design philosophy, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories that reveal the hidden side of World War II history, where machines, ideas, and innovation decided the fate of nations.